With that being said, it's time for the Q&A portion of the morning's program. And with that, we're going to make sure that everybody that's a panelist that's actually had a part of the presentations this morning, if all of y'all could unmute yourselves as appropriate, we'll get right into the questions. And feel free to continue to ask questions. We have a number of questions, but I think we have plenty of time prior to lunch to actually go through as many as we possibly can. So if we don't get to all the questions, we'll try to make sure we get an answer to the ones that we don't get to. But so continue to submit questions as we go through this. Okay, first question. I think this first question is going to be for you, Mark.
Okay.
And that is, should ramps follow the line widths for roads that they are connected to?
So yes, I need to make a line there. Okay. So the drawings do require that 6-inch lines, currently require 6-inch lines on all limited access highways, including ramps, unless it's specifically designated otherwise in the plans. And the FHWA's proposed new MUTCD would also require 6-inch lines, edge lines on the ramps as well. So in general, yes, VDOT is already doing that.
All right, thank you for that answer, Mark. And not to let you sit down for a second, I'm going to go ahead and let you take a first shot at this next one as well, and that is, will we still be able to emit arrows in turning lanes that do not connect to other roadways? And an example that would be like a U-turn crossover.
Currently, we do sometimes omit arrows in those types of crossovers. The way that the feds have written the proposed MUTCD, we would no longer be able to do that. So both in left turn lanes and in U-turn crossovers, you would have to have arrows in place.
So just to clarify, what you're saying then is, and you just spoke to that earlier, the FHWA's revised MUTCD that's not been put into service yet, but the one that's out for comment actually would not allow that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Assuming that carries through to the final rule, like I believe I mentioned in my presentation, it's probably going to be at least sometime next year by the time a new MUTCD actually gets issued, and VDOT has states have up to 2 years to adopt a new MUTCD. So even if that is in the final MUTCD, that won't go into effect probably in Virginia for a few years.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mark. All right, the next question is going to be for both Mark and maybe for Connie, you and Mullins Markings, and that is, can the pin groove be sealed before the epoxy and marker are installed?
I guess I'll start off, but then I'm interested to hear the contractor perspective on this too. I believe that according to the specifications, we don't specify a sequence of construction. So contractually, yes, you can seal the pin groove beforehand. However, if you do so, then you would need to protect the bottom of the plunge cut while you're doing the sealing. So that way, when you subsequently install the epoxy for the PIM, that epoxy is adhering to bare pavement. We do have a concern that the epoxy wouldn't really bond that well to the fog sealing material. So whether that's a practical thing that you can do, I guess I'll defer to others on that. You could probably answer that.
Hey, Mark, I just wanted to quickly correct you. There is a sequence of operations. It is a special provision copy note included in the contracts that have sealant of PIMs. And it does state the sequence, and sealing of the grooves is the last item after the PIM installation.
Okay, thank you for correcting me then. I didn't realize that.
Jeremy, let me ask you a question real quick. You say that's a special provision copied note. Generally, copied notes are specific to specific contracts. Is that something that Richmond has done, or is that something that you're saying is available for all districts to use in their contracts?
So I've seen it in 2 contracts for the Fredericksburg district as well as the Richmond district for latex modified projects. I haven't seen other projects that have it, but I do know it is for the latex ones. So I'm assuming that this sequence was particularly designed for the installation and sealing of PIMs.
Okay, Jeremy, I appreciate you commenting on that. That's something probably, Mark, that we probably ought to have included in the traffic engineering co-op that's coming up on the 20th.
Okay.
All right, then. Anybody else have any comments associated with that one? Okay, our next question, and this one might be for you, David. It says, should portable temporary rumble strips be used on milled surfaces?
All right, I'll take that one. Yeah, according to the information we currently have in the work area protection manual, it says they should not be used on milled surfaces. And that reasoning is it's going to really depend on how loose the surface is of that milled surface. We don't want the rumble strips to be moving around throughout the day. So currently the WAPM says they should not be used on milled surfaces.
All right. Appreciate it. And I'll just stick with portable temporary rumble strips for a minute then, since we're on that topic. And this would, I'll lean on you for a second here, David. Are portable temporary rumble strips, are they presently required on construction projects? I think the answer to that's yes, but I'm sure you can go into better detail.
Sure. Yeah. Based on the IEM, when it came out, projects advertised after July 1st, 2019 was supposed to have the portable temporary rumble strips in there as a pay item for 2-lane flagging operations. Remember, it's just for 2-lane flagging operations. So I would think at this point in time, all their construction projects should have them in. And just to share with the group, the department firmly believes in the portable rumble strips, and we're in the process of revising the IIM to also require them and permit in utility operations starting after the 1st of 2022.
And you just hit our next question there, David. So just to reiterate, portable temporary rumble strips are also going to be required on permit work, and that's of what date in 2022?
It'd be any permit issued after January 1st, 2022.
Very good. All right, this next question is for you. I guess, Mark, I'll let you start out with it, and then I'll see if maybe if Connie from Mullins Markins has any additional comments. And that is, can you go over the present situation as it relates to the paint shortage and how VDOT's responded to that? And I believe the letter went out just less than a week ago related to what VDOT's response is to handling the paint shortage for the short term. Can you go over that real quickly, Mark?
Sure, yes. So just some background for those of you who aren't familiar with it. I imagine most people are already familiar with this situation, but there is a lot of petrochemical companies in Texas were pretty badly impacted by all the freezing weather they had there earlier this winter, including a plant that makes a resin that's used in a lot of traffic paints. So because of that, we began learning probably about 2 weeks ago that several paint manufacturers are reporting major shortages, and they are significantly limiting the shipments that they can make of paint. So these suppliers are, Sherwin-Williams and other paint companies. They're prioritizing their government contracts as top priority. So for VDOT's internal in-house striping crews, we think at this point that we're still going to be able to procure the paint that we need to do our restriping activities. However, many of the contractors out there might have a lot more trouble until late spring, probably even into summer, getting orders of paint. So in response, and this is, it's somewhat similar to the shortage that happened back in 2010 and 2011, although at this point, knock on wood, it does not seem anywhere near as bad as what happened back then. So in response, there was a letter that was issued to both the districts and to industry. So sent out to the district construction engineers, district materials, several other people. And then on the industry side, it was sent to Trenton and some of the other industry groups. It basically allowed some, I guess, allowances for now through May 31st to address this shortage. So the first one, and probably the easiest response, is for temporary markings. We've always allowed, and we will continue to allow, flexible temporary pavement markings to be used instead of temporary paint to simulate the temporary line. The one slight change is up until now, technically, that's only been allowed for paving schedules. And we've now said that we're going to allow it for all construction projects, which was, it was in our plan in the works to make that spec change anyway, starting with next year, to allow it for all construction projects. The second is for temporary paint, we are allowing what's known as airport paint. It's kind of not really as good a quality of paint, but it is something that other states or other jurisdictions will sometimes allow. So we're going to allow it as well for, even though it's not on our approved products list, for temporary marking, not for permanent, but for temporary. And then the third allowance is we've allowed that for temporary lines, they can go down a bit thinner. So instead of our usual 15 mils, they can go down to 10 mils. And as well, they would then use 4 pounds per gallon of beads instead of 6 pounds per gallon of beads. And then the last part is for temporary 6-inch or temporary 8-inch lines, which you don't have a lot of those, but if you do have a contract that calls for temporary 6-inch paint or 8-inch paint, then you can do it a little bit narrow. So substitute a 4-inch line for a 6-inch line, and then a 6-inch line for an 8-inch line. So we're going to continue to monitor the situation, and there may well be more guidance that is issued in the next month to 2 months, especially if it seems like this is a situation, the ripple effects are going to extend beyond May 31st. I guess with that, I'm going to pause and see if any of the other contractors in the room want to talk to what they're seeing or what they're hearing from their suppliers.
Hey, David. Travis. I think is that any better?
Yeah, go ahead, Travis. Thank you.
Yep. Basically, not much different than what Mark has to say. We're not hearing any new news from what we've already given. The things that we are hearing is that it could be early summer to even midsummer before the manufacturers get through their backlog of material that they would typically already have stockpiled in their plants ready for the season. And then the other concern is a few of these pilot projects that are coming up this year with the high build material that requires the same resins from what I'm being told, and that they will not even think about making that material until they get current on their type A regular latex paint, because they have to clean out the vats and start over again for that material.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Travis. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to ask also for Travis or for anyone else, have you heard anything about whether or not this will also affect the epoxy that is used to secure PIMs in place, or any other materials for that matter?
As far as for the PIMs, we have touched base to make sure. There is a slight backlog, but with the majority of the PIMs not taking place till late summer to early fall, typically, they don't see a shortage concern for at least the Virginia.
All right, thanks both of you, and you know, certainly we appreciate VDOT taking the time to come up with some sort of a plan so that we can try to make it through the early part of the season. We certainly hope that this clears up as quickly as possible, and I know that the industry and Travis and your group and Connie, y'all have worked very hard to try to mitigate this as best you can, as early as you can. You know, it's like anything though, when you have a limited supply of material, you know, everybody wants that material. You know, for example, the federal paint is an option, but it's an option for everybody. So it's one of those things that, while you know it sounds good, and it certainly it does provide another answer, another alternative, but everybody wants that alternative. So it's a limited supply. So it's still a limited supply because paint is paint. So, but again, I appreciate VDOT's effort.
The only thing I would say to that is that we're being told that Fed paint is gone. Everything that was sitting on shelf early season is gone, and because that's a more specialty item than the state paint, that'll be on the back burner as well for now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that very much, Travis. Mark you just brought up a second ago, and one of the questions we've had is related to the pilot work that you just spoke to. Can you bring the group up to this, on what plans are for this year for the pilots? And then if you have any information related to how this shortage might affect it, then that would be appreciated.
Yeah, so we do have a select number of contracts that have been advertised this paving season that have either what we're calling it right now, the X1 or the X2 marking. So X1 is high build paint with larger beads. So it's a 27 mil thickness, I believe, 25, 27 mils. I think we call for 27. And then the X2 is thermoplastic, but with wet reflective optics that are specifically designed to provide wet night retroreflectivity. The thermoplastic should not be at all impacted by this whole material shortage issue. So no impacts there. And beads themselves, of course, are not impacted. As far as the high build paint, I guess there's only a select number of contracts. So I think we might, to the extent that this shortage particularly impacts high build paint, I think we might just address those on a case-by-case basis for this particular paving season. And we can communicate that to the affected district paving managers. The third pilot, it was not, I don't believe it was in any contracts that are actually advertised. We are probably going to be pursuing work orders for a select number of contracts as to pilot polyurea in at least 1 or 2 locations around the state. So that's actually already in the spec book right now as type B class 7 markings. Even though it's in the spec book, historically VDOT has pretty much never used it, but we are interested in at least piloting it. And then we are also monitoring, we did have one test installation of high build paint last year out in Highland County. And so we're going to be going out later this spring or summer to monitor and see how it's performing.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank all y'all on the panel. We have a couple of other questions that mostly relate to the afternoon session. So I think we're going to hold those off to that session. And again, remember that you can ask questions throughout the day today. So if you think of something that's related to the morning session, go ahead and ask it. Even if we don't get to the answer today, we'll certainly try to provide an answer when we get everything out associated with this seminar.